Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about specifically what it means to have your sun in Gemini and your sun in the third house. So welcome to my channel. My name is Brandon and I do astrology videos here on YouTube. So this is my Gemini and third house series. So throughout this series, I'm going to be going through every single planet in Gemini, as well as every single planet within the third house, from the sun to Saturn. And so this playlist is something I've already done for Aries and Taurus, and in turn the first and second house. So feel free to check that playlist down below. And then if you don't know, if you have your sun in the third house, or if for some reason you might not know if you're a sun in Gemini, there's a link down below as well that you can use to check out to see your chart to kind of have a better idea of what this third house may mean, or what just further things of like your sun Gemini. Like, let's say you don't know if it's exactly the day you change from Gemini to Cancer or from Taurus to Gemini. So just kind of some more clarification of that you can definitely see down below. So this video is for you. So there's going to be in the description box as well some timestamps. So you can go to those timestamps and see specifically when I talk about what, as I will talk about the sun in Gemini, as well as the sun in the third house. In addition to that, I am also going to be talking about just the sun in general within astrology, and kind of how it plays a big role within your own natal chart. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put it down in the description box below. I would love to hear from you guys. This is a super fun series for me to be doing, and it has been super enjoyable just to live through like such an extensive deep dive of all of these archetypes really intensely. And so I have been enjoying all of this, and I'm so excited to be doing Gemini week. It is going to be super fun. With that being said, obviously, as you guys know, this is YouTube, and you know how the algorithm works, so you know that if you like, comment, share, subscribe, it allows, you know, the YouTube gods to give me blessings in that regard. So if you feel the desire to click some buttons that give some engagement, that would obviously help me, as you all know with the way the internet works. So anywho, so with that all aside, I'm going to get right on into it, and we're going to talk specifically about what it means just in general, just the sun within astrology. Okay, so many of you are probably already aware of what the sun in astrology is kind of about. You're kind of aware of your sun sign. If you do not know if you're a Gemini sun, like I said, if you were on that kind of like in between Taurus and Gemini, or Gemini and Cancer, there's a thing in the description box that you can check out that will tell you specifically what time within that day that it really does change, depending upon your time zone and place and all those things. So regardless, the sun is what we are most conditioned to kind of know from an astrological perspective. So most people know their sun sign because this has just been something that's been kind of indoctrinated into our society of just knowing the sun sign. However, obviously, as we do know, there are way more planets than just the sun, which is why we're going to be going through all of them within this series here within the sign of Gemini, because different planets function very differently in the sign of Gemini, and the sun is no exception. And it is just the one that we are most conscious of and most aware of and most conditioned to just know that we have. But it is important as well to know that there's the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, all those things as well. And then within the natal chart, the sun is really a lot about what you are choosing to pay attention to, or what your identity is kind of shining light on, and what you are kind of a sort of character or role that you're looking to kind of play, or kind of a genre in a movie, if you will. So the sun is kind of like your genre of the topics that you're going to be really aware of throughout your entire life, because that sun it's the brightest light that we have, and so it will illuminate areas related to that specific sign and house locality, as well as aspects too. And so the sun in the natal chart will definitely show specifically what area you're really focusing in on, what you want to identify with, what you over-identify with, what your ego and what your kind of sense of self is focused around. And specifically in Gemini in the third house, it's going to have its own sort of focus, as opposed to, Capricorn, or, the ninth house or the 12th house or something to that effect, right? So it's all about knowing how your sun is placed within the natal chart, and also as well kind of where it's also kind of going, meaning like aspects and different conversations and houses and things like that. And so that's a whole different conversation, which we're not really going to get into. I might sprinkle it in a little bit throughout the course of this video here, as we go through the sun in Gemini and the sun in the third house. But for the most part, the sun is really a lot of where identity is focused. And typically that sun sign placement, especially by house, but also by sign, is going to have a lot of planets kind of coupled around it, because we live in like a heliocentric system, meaning that all of the planets circle the sun. So a lot of the other planets, Mercury, Venus, the moon, not entirely, but mainly Mercury and Venus, are going to kind of have some locality in relation to that sun sign. So if you have a sun in Gemini, you're likely to have Mercury or Venus in Gemini, because Mercury or Venus don't go more than like 1 or 2 signs away, depending upon which planet you're referring to. And then same with that third house. If you have your sun in the third house, you're likely to have, Mercury and Venus kind of somewhere around that area as well, and sometimes in that same sign or in that same house. So just look at that as well. There's a lot more layers to this, as you guys can kind of learn through. With that is what I want to add. I do have some courses down below, a beginner's course, so feel free to check that out as well down below, as there is quite a lot of content in there that I will be really kind of adding to as I progress and do a lot more intermediate courses and things of that nature too. So with all that being said, let's get started right off to do more talking and go right into what it means to have your sun. Okay, so we have the sun in the sign of Gemini. These people are very, very, very interesting and very unique in quite a lot of different ways, because while the sun is in Gemini, there is this very interesting switch, because the mutable signs are always related to that time of year that is a switch between seasons. So in Western America, this is the change between spring to summer. And so the thing about all mutable signs is they're all going to be associated with that kind of changeability, where things are shifting, and kind of how we shift between, certain seasons and certain really different sorts of sometimes times of year, and kind of that natural kind of flow that we just kind of progress through. And so with mutability being where the sun is located in Gemini, and this being the first mutable sign, there is a lot of focuses around the first type of mutability that we tend to experience in our life, which is related to our opinion and the voices of others. And this is where Gemini as well as the third house kind of play into one another, where that's the time of life that we're really understanding that someone else has something different to say. We're learning language. We're learning how to communicate what we want. We're learning how to navigate our neighborhood, how to speak to our neighbors, how to speak to our parents, how to speak to our siblings if we have siblings, how to speak to our friends. We're in school. We're learning how to read and write. And there's all these things that are kind of just growing within us at that specific age and specific time. And this really rules that like elementary school type of time, grade school, primary school, those types of time that we are really leaning into the acquisition of knowledge and really setting that kind of framework. And so when you have your sun in Gemini and also in the third house, there is this very big identity around that, and big focus around that specific experience. And it could be something that your learning process, this is more specific to the third house, but your learning process is something, and that time in your life becomes something that you really need to identify with, and really need to kind of revisit and integrate into your life. And a lot of that foundational learning is really, really, really important for everybody. But for those that have third house and Gemini placements, there's a lot more richness there, and a lot more of a natural focus and a natural intent, because that is where your sun is bringing you and bringing your attention and bringing your light to, and it's also something where you find a lot of your identity from. So these are people that have sun and Gemini, have a very youthful energy. That's why they're very youthful, very young. They also have very quick minds, because their mind is so kind of encased in a way in that specific age, and that specific malleability and adaptability that comes at that learning process at that time. And it kind of always stays in that learning mode, which is really, really beautiful. And that's why the Gemini suns have quite an active mind. They're also ruled by Mercury, obviously. And so it's important to see what your Mercury is doing within your chart. Once again, like I had said a little bit earlier, the Mercury is going to be within one sign of the sun, so it's either going to be in Taurus, Gemini, or Cancer, and it will be either obviously direct or retrograde. So it is something to pay attention to, especially because Gemini is ruled by Mercury, so that sun has a lot of importance of how it's understanding information, how it's communicating through what Mercury is doing. And that's where you're going to see a lot more of these layers kind of progress within astrology and within the way that the chart kind of unfolds itself and begins to tell this story, which is also very Gemini, right? So the sun in the sign of Gemini, there is this very, like I said, youthful experience. Gemini suns are one of those signs that get a lot of like disrespect, really, and a lot of people that really just look at it so poorly and negatively because it's ruled by this mercurial trickster energy, but also this adaptability. They have this really great gift of being able to explore so much and be so quick on their feet, and be able to identify stuff from a mental standpoint and kind of unwrap a lot of information. And this isn't true for every single sun, like sun in Gemini, because there can be aspects and things that are kind of hardening that or making that mental capacity a little bit more difficult to obtain or to maintain. But in the same way, similar to Mercury's placement, is going to also show a little bit more of that. But overall, Gemini suns have this very adaptable nature to them, and Mercury is really the only planet outside of Neptune that can kind of lie and be deceitful, because it has this quality of understanding the information around it, but it is kind of this self-protective information in a sort of way where Mercury can perceive that there is some information that they're being presented, that if they say it in this way or they say it in that way, they like to play, like, there's a curiosity that comes with this that can come across as manipulative and two-faced and all of those things that Gemini gets thrown into, just because Gemini, it's just what society has projected on that archetype. And it's something that needs to be really unboxed and kind of reframed, because the Gemini sun has this natural curiosity of exploring with their power of their own mind. Granted, yes, of course, are there people that utilize manipulation for a negative tool? Yes, without a doubt, that definitely exists. But are there people that also use manipulation to help box out people's, issues, and be therapists for people, and be people that support people and help them through exploring their mental kind of landscape? Yeah, that's another form of manipulation. It's just really how you frame it. And that Gemini sun has this light that they can shine on the information that's being presented to them, as well as the way that they're communicating. They play around with that, and they want to see all the kind of ranges that their mind and their words can impact their environment. And it's a very bright kind of like illumination that happens when the sun's in Gemini to all of those things, where they can see so many different ways that this can be interpreted and spoken about and changed. And so they have this really adaptable mind, and I think it's one of the coolest mutable signs in one of my opinions, because they have this this childlike wonder that tends to come with Gemini that isn't necessarily associated with pretty much any of the other mutable signs. Pisces has it in a little bit of a different way, but it is ultimately Gemini, because it rules that elementary kind of time period and that kind of curiosity. It has such a lightness to it, and that lightness, as it ages, can definitely learn a lot about communication and communication skills, but really know how to like work with it. And it can be really difficult. It really, really can, when they utilize it for negative things. But Gemini suns, they are quite active, and this is more for me in my own experience. Gemini risings have been a lot for me to personally handle, but Gemini suns I haven't had much of an issue with personally, meaning that it's just a very active mind and a very talkative mind. Gemini risings are a little bit more on the what I perceive as more Gemini than Gemini suns, but that's just my own kind of experience, and I have a lot more Gemini risings than Gemini suns within my life. And the Gemini risings have this different kind of active mind that's just always going, that makes it a little bit more noticeable to me personally, as opposed to the Gemini sun. But I have obviously seen Gemini suns that kind of have that same quality, and it's something that I wish I had sometimes. I wish I could keep up with a Gemini sun and even a Gemini rising, because they have that very quick constantly analyzing their environment sort of way. And it's a gift. It can be definitely overwhelming as a Gemini sun or Gemini rising. I don't know why I'm bringing that in this, but there you go. But the Gemini sun has this very, very fun identity. They also have a lot of things where their father can be very influential in their learning style. And they can also be really great teachers. And like I said, elementary school really is that kind of time that they're really kind of re-exploring. Junior high, those sorts of times that are really instrumental in creating knowledge and instilling that knowledge and passing that wisdom on to people. And that's what you see a lot with Geminis. They're gonna really key into that and key into what people need and what people need to hear, and kind of be able to communicate and kind of be able to adapt their speaking style to whomever they're talking to. And so they also have a lot that they can say, a lot that they can talk about, a lot of topics. They can be widespread too. You see Gemini, I feel like Gemini gets this the most in, and I think I could say maybe all mutable signs, but more so Gemini and maybe Sag, and maybe Pisces too, but more so Gemini, I think, is probably on the tier of them, probably the highest, in the one that gets that phrase of the jack of all trades, master of none, is better than being the master of one, if that's actually how the phrase finishes, but no one ever talks about that. But point is there's this very interesting jack of all trades energy, because it's interesting because trade actually is also associated with Gemini, and mercurial kind of things. So it very much does fit very perfectly to Gemini as just that metaphor or that phrase, I guess. And so there's this kind of hands in a bunch of different things, spinning a bunch of different plates, having a lot of different hats that they wear, a lot of different skill sets, because they're always trying to learn and grow. And their identity is always trying to just continuously get the next piece of information to kind of put the puzzle together. And it's very hunter-gatherer energy, because the Gemini is the external Mercury, the extroverted Mercury, the daytime Mercury. So it's the one that's going around and getting all the information and doing all the talking and doing all the sales and all those things, and kind of speaking for maybe a career or speaking maybe for a living, right? That's what you can tend to see with Sun Gemini people, and as well as Sun the third. They can also have a very great writing ability, very great with media, social media, sales, quick on their, very, very quick on getting what they need, and very quick on getting people to talk to them, listen to them, sell people them, refer people to other people from Gemini. I have a Gemini Sun coworker who refers me quite a lot of people, and it's quite interesting, his very rapid Gemini quality that he has. Like he's very, very Gemini, and it's a very active, sort of quick sale, right? That's kind of the way that Gemini can do. They can also sit and they can do long form stuff as well, but they're very quick and very information based and very talkative and very, very mental, which is really, really powerful in the information age that we are in, right? The information that they're able to really take in. And I know I said this, and I'll probably mention this in a later video, but there's the two Gemini suns that I know were the ones that really spoke to and taught me about content, not really content creation, but on how to like organize playlists, and as well as how to watch things on 2x speed. And they were the first person I knew that started watching stuff on 2x speed was a Gemini, right? It was very very on brand for that to be what Geminis are known for, is information processing. So they definitely have that processing speed a little bit higher, tuned a little bit higher to the average person, because they're very quick in their mind. And it's a really powerful gift, and I just love the Sun in Gemini. It's really fun. It's really enjoyable. And yeah, there's also this, there could be this interesting relationship with the father, where there's a youthfulness to the father. And like I said, very talkative, very knowledgeable father figure, or knowledgeable authority. They can also get really, this is for all Gemini placements, not just the Sun, but they can fall into gossip. Because that's what Gemini is about. But the thing about gossip people don't really mention when it comes to Gemini is that gossip was something that was actually utilized in like community many years ago to warn of issues, and to be like, hey, we can't eat those berries, those blueberries over there, they're gonna hurt you, they're poisonous, they will die. I saw this person do this and they ate the berry and they died, right? That's what gossip was used for. And that's something that I think people don't understand about like the root of gossip and where it comes from. Obviously, gossip can be very, and typically is pretty bad, but it's something that I think Geminis can get the most caught up into, but they're doing it ideally with the intent of self-protection or self-preservation of the information and the people and that they care about. They're the ones that are informing everyone else around them. Hey, don't do this, try this, go this way, all those things. Also, Virgo does this too, but Virgo's a little bit different. It's not as getting into everything and hearing every opinion all the time. It can, but Virgo's a little bit more kind of like a funnel, as opposed to it can't. Yeah, I don't know what the other one would be, but like Virgo's very funnel energy, and Gemini can be very hunter-gatherer and then kind of learn from that experience. It's kind of more youthful in that regard. It's not as experienced as the Virgo side of things in Mercury is, because Mercury has gone out at that point and has experienced stuff and is now kind of revisiting itself. So it's a very interesting sun sign. And it does have, like I said, very good in sales, very good in communication, in teaching, in content, in education, in just mercurial things. So anything related to their hands and use of their hands, anything related to the information, being writing, reading, teaching, like I said, sales, marketing. You can see Sun in Gemini has an identity around that. So they're very much just like trying to, not necessarily always to sell, but they're trying to understand their landscape. And they're just like going here and going there and going, doing all these things. And it's really, really fun. Like it has that youthful exploration process to it. And I love my Sun Gemini brothers and sisters. They're phenomenal. And they have such a youthful curiosity to them that I think is so enriching and like a breath of fresh air. It can be kind of a lot of air for some people, because once again, it's the first air sign. It's the first time we are understanding the information around us and really digging into that within our life. It represents that time in our life, but it is something that the Sun in Gemini kind of keeps throughout their life, that youthful kind of exploration process, which is why their mind is always typically so sharp. It can, like I said, based off the Sun, it can kind of go in a bunch of different directions, but for the most part, it does have this this youthfulness that it kind of carries throughout its entire life, which I think is really, really, really fun. And it's kind of dualistic nature too, to its identity. So it can kind of also have two kind of expressions of itself, and this is where you see the adaptability of the socialite in Gemini, or the different topics they're wanting to learn that are very different about, one thing all the way over here, one thing all the way over here. They're trying to learn all these different opinions. So it's really fun. This Gemini energy is a lot for me to sit in, because I don't work with Gemini energy personally in my own chart as much. I have a few Gemini clients, not as much as I have with Cancer, but it's a very unique energy, and it's a lot. And obviously I meant to mention this, but I also record these videos during Gemini season and release them during Gemini season. So it's always a very heightened Gemini time during this, where I'm just like, okay, we're just talking and we're doing all the Gemini stuff. And so it's really sitting in that energy when I do this, which is why it's really, really enjoyable. And I love really having more of an experiential moment with you guys as I go through this, which is kind of really fun. I kind of just allow spirit to just see where things go. And I think it's super, super fun. And I love it. Gemini is a very talkative, very enjoyable sign. And yeah, so with that, I'm going to move on to the next part where we talk about what it means to have your Sun in the third house. But prior to doing that, I want to let you guys know that if you guys have any comments, questions, anything you want to say about this portion, feel free to put it down in the description box below. I would love to hear your opinions, as Gemini is really big on that. So I would love to hear about what you guys think about this and where your thoughts are coming from, what your experience has been with either your own Sun in Gemini, someone else's Sun in Gemini. And then, of course, if you guys are interested in booking with me or any of those sorts of things, my website's down below as well. And so, yeah, so I will see you in the next part. We talk about specifically what it means to have the Sun in the third house. Okay, so we have the Sun in the third house. So this is one of those houses that is a little bit different, and because it definitely rules, like I said with the Gemini portion, it rules that kind of time in our life where we're really learning, we're really kind of understanding ourselves, we're kind of understanding how we communicate, how we speak, our neighborhood, our neighbors. We're really kind of going out and seeing what the world is and really being able to bring that back and kind of be that messenger. And so with the sun here, with every planet that goes in this house, there's going to be a very big focus upon that process, and on how you acquire knowledge, how you utilize your story, how you share your story with the world, and how you go about doing that, right? And so when we put the sun there, this is going to be literally through who you are, how you show up, how you identify yourself, how you brand yourself. And so with the third house ruling that kind of branding, selling of yourself process, with the sun in the third, we're going to see people who are literally their brand. Their messaging becomes so crucial with that sun in the third house, because their identity becomes so infused with their words and how they present themselves and how they label themselves, that depending upon that sun sign and the aspects and all those things, you're going to see that they're going to have specific messaging that they're going to do, right? If we see the sun in the third house in Scorpio, we're going to have someone who is very deep and like inspective's not a word, investigative. I was saying inspector and it was weird. Investigative with their word choice and with their brand, and they might be very mysterious as well, and same with the sun in Pisces, but that might also be a different kind of like esoteric, kind of not really super grounded, but also really creative, kind of this elusiveness that we can kind of see with certain identities in that third house. But at the end of the day, it's really about their messaging of what they show online, or how they come across, or what they talk about, what they write, how they write, is going to be such a big importance on their identity and how they show up in the world. And so their certain sun and third house people, you can see, have a little bit more of a they take what people say about them more seriously. They take what they say more seriously. Typically, all sun third house people are going to take what they say more seriously, but depending upon that sun sign in that third house, it can kind of lean towards a lot of different ways of communicating, a lot of different ways of sharing yourself with the world, and it can be something that is really loud and exuberant and messy, or it can be something that's very put together and clean and polished and quiet and mute. And so there could be a wide range of how this person identifies or shows their identity, and finds the right words to share that with the world. And I think there's so much nuance to this, as the third house is so unique and nuanced and different, and it's kind of where a lot of just miscellaneous sorts of information and things go. So with the sun in the third house, there can definitely be this identification with their neighborhood, with their car. There can definitely be, you can see a lot of car people. These are people that, this sounds really strange, but people that have sun in the third house can have a really like specifically a business in cars, and in transportation, when they can have a business in anything that's related to Mercury, to trade, to traveling. And so sun in third house can be someone who it's like the process of putting flyers and posters of yourself up around your neighborhood. That's very sun third house, and kind of getting your messaging out there. It's a very much like a moment of just like, I want everyone to see me, I want everyone to know who I am, and I want my messaging to be this certain way. And that's where the third house has its own sort of kind of catch-all and its own sort of like nuances to it, because it also wants us to especially when there's planets here, to really understand what we're wanting to present. And that can be really difficult when we don't know exactly what we want to study, what we want to focus in on, where our information wants to go, what we want to brand ourselves as. And so there can be this identity crisis sometimes with getting lost in other people's opinions, other people's voices, other people's thoughts and certifications, and what thing do I want to do for school? What do I want to learn? What do I want to focus my mind in on? What do I want to kind of be identified with? And this is where you can see with some of the third house people, and also that ninth house there too. So if like we had like sun and Sag in the third, or sun in Capricorn or Aquarius in the third, even Virgo, especially Virgo, there would be this kind of like, these are people that I would see being like doctors, people that really want to go to school and learn something, and have a lot of stress around what that process can be like. Even Scorpio, like these more like, I guess you could say heavier sorts of, or more like, I guess, malefic, air quotes, type of, signs in the third house can make this information acquisition process that they're identifying with really long and arduous and difficult. And so, but it can be something that definitely pays off, and it's something that they become identified with their mind and their brand and their messaging and their information that they've learned and they've acquired through that time that kind of never ends with a sun third house person. There's also people that can be really great at editing content, at creating videos, creating content, learning how to show up online, show up in spaces, find ways to speak on things. And something I I've thought about a lot that relates to Gemini is this aspect of, if you are the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, and that's something the Sun third house people, depending upon what sun sign this is, can almost have this big ego boost when they're in a room where they feel like the smartest person, and they want to kind of be seen as that intelligent person. They want, because the sun wants to illuminate the third house, which is your information, your knowledge, what you know, your opinion, the voice you can share with your immediate environment in that like immediate kind of moment. And when the sun's in the third house, there can be this like all eyes on me. I want to be the voice in this particular environment. I want to share what I have to say. I want to share my story. And you can see this story is very different depending upon those signs that are ruling that third house, as well as obviously the sign of the sun in there. And so you can see like very different types of topics and focuses in that third house, and different relationships with information, with the story they're telling and the way they're going about it, and the audience they want to kind of focus in on, and the type of information and stuff they really want to key in on their own specific experience. And so the sun here has a very curious sort of quality to it in the way that it tends to go about its day to day, and it really wants to find ways to, it's all about personal branding. I think that's like the biggest part I would say for sun in the third house that is a little bit different than the sun in Gemini, because the sun in Gemini is all about kind of just knowing how to speak on things, but the sun in the third house has a very specific message about its identity that it's trying to bring across, and that is very much dependent on the sign that's in that third house. And so a Leo third house sun is going to be a really creative person, but there's going to be creative conversations and creative input and output they have to really learn about and learn how to kind of navigate, as well as how to take in that criticism, take in those compliments, or take in that adoration or that acceptance. And these are the ones that you'll likely see that have a little bit more of that. I want to like be the focus of the attention of the conversation. I want to be the one that is the one that's being heard and talked about and listened to and all of those things. And so you can see with the sun in that third that there's this really, really powerful voice that they have, this story they want to say. And when we see like sun in a fire sign there's going to be this really like creative, active, go, go, go type of thing in that third house, where they're going to want to share these opinions. They're going to want to kind of be more of the active light and the active kind of ignition in a way, an active kind of, fuel to the fire of conversations. They're going to want to be the ones that are in debates, that are in kind of the sauce of those types of conversations and gossip, and the ones that are kind of running these sorts of circles of information and conversations and discussions. They're definitely going to want to be that person, especially when the sun's in Aries or Leo, even in Sag too, but that's more of a storytelling kind of philosophical way about it too. But they're going to be a lot of leadership with the sun in a fire sign in that third house. And the sun in an earth sign is going to be a lot more methodical, a lot more slow with the information that they're processing and they're bringing to a situation, as well as kind of more long term. So these are the ones, like I said, that are going to be, when it comes to like Capricorn, Virgo, that are going, and even Taurus, that are going to be the ones that are kind of talking about things that are career oriented and want their information to be very pointed and valuable and stable and strong, and test and like kind of really build a solid foundation in their in what they're presenting themselves to be. So these are the people, especially like Sun Capricorn in the third, are like writers and people that live lives that have a really long, rich history and story behind it that they really need to bring out. Sun Virgo is where you see a lot more of a critical nature, and this is where you see a lot more medicine, a lot more librarians, a lot more like estheticians or people that go to school to learn something that is very mercurial, that is very utilized in a very high functioning way, and it can be, just something that's really detail oriented. So I see a lot of people with Sun Virgo in the third house that can be, you know, estheticians, that can be hairstylists, that can go to, you know, culinary school. This I'll see more with like some Virgo or some like Virgo placements and mixed in with this, or second house placements. But this is where you can see a lot of like people that go to trade schools with this, and things that are very mercurial in nature, but in a way that is very hands-on, and very much able to share a story in that conversation. Also, once again, third house placements are really great for therapists. This is where you'll see more with like Sun Cancer, Sun Pisces here, where they're really trying to bring out that that kind of emotional kind of quality in their conversations, because they're really tuned into that kind of more emotional undercurrent that we see in those water signs, and kind of that awareness. Kind of all three water signs kind of have their own kind of approach to that. I'm not really going like super deep into these, because obviously like this would be like a forever long video if I were to do that. But it is something that I really think is important, especially during the third house kind of thing, kind of see all the ways that this can kind of come in, right? And this is just simply talking about just the sun in that third house, and kind of delineating different sorts of ways that the sun can function in these different aspects. And obviously you're going to want to see at what planet rules that sun, and where that's happening, what that's doing, aspects of the sun, things like that. And because I'm not even going to get into those things, because that's a whole nother layer to this, that's a little bit more on the intermediate side of interpretation and chart delineation. But it is something that is definitely of importance if you guys are at that level, to kind of look a step beyond that. And with that, kind of just, I'm not quite done, but with that, if you guys are interested in obviously hearing my delineation on your own personal chart, in the description box, you'll see my website and all those things. You can book with me, reach out to me on any of my socials, and just ask me any questions about it. And obviously, if you guys have stuff to say, like, comment, subscribe, all that too, but comment down below specifically what your thoughts are on your chart, and what you may think about it. And I will let you guys know what I think. But anyway, so with this sun here too, the sun and earth, like I said, they're all going to be this kind of like really methodical thing about their branding, their messaging, how they learn, how they take in information, what they want to focus their kind of information on. But overall, these are people that are amazing writers, that write a lot or speak a lot or have a story to tell. And everyone in the third house has a story to tell. But the sun there's a lot more of, you see a lot of creative writers. You see a lot of people that have a knack for shining light on different ways that they want to tell a story, and they want to share their identity with the world, or what they see in the world. And like a sun in Pisces individual, or sun in Leo, sun in, you know, Sag, even in Libra too, sometimes you can see these people that have really great creative writing skills, and really great, you know, poetry skills, and things that are able to see the world through the lens of an artist, which I think is so cool when it comes to the sun in that third house and in that fifth house, of being able to see the world through their eyes. You can also see great photographers with this too. Sun in the third is like amazing people that put so much life into how they see the world, and it's so mind-boggling to me. And I would love to be able to lean into that skill that I think is so natural for those that have sun in the third house, that ability to just visualize the world with such, not necessarily always rose-colored glasses, because that's like Pisces to like the nth degree, right? But just in general, having this kind of like different perspective. And that's the thing, they have such a different perspective when the sun's in the third, because they're meant to have such a unique kind of approach to things, and share that share that perspective, share that lens that they see the world through, share the way that they identify the world to be, and how the light is kind of, how the world is reflecting its imagery to them, and how they interpret that. There's so much there, and how they interpret who they are and how they're seeing the world. And that's where the sun in the third is just so, it's so fun. It's so fun, and it's so cool. And I am somewhat jealous sometimes, like I said, about that artistic quality of just seeing the world through a sun in the third house, or like even just certain signs' eyes, anyone's eyes. I think is so unique. Everyone has such a unique perspective, and the sun third housers, every third houser really has that. And it's such a cool experience to kind of be able to kind of live through that, and come back on the other side and say, this is who I am, this is how I see the world, this is how the world is presented to me, and how I am formulating my opinion and formulating my hypothesis, or my approach to the world too. Sun in air, these are going to be the people that are definitely going to have, and obviously I'll go through a lot more of like obviously like the sun in specific signs later as this series progresses, you know, through Cancer, Leo, so on and so forth. So that's why I'm not really going too deep into all of these, because this, like I said, would be so long. But the sun in air signs, so obviously Gemini, there's going to be a lot of like really key third house stuff here. So these are going to be really, really mercurial people. Sun, third house, and Gemini, there's a lot of overlap there, but there's going to be a lot of like bigger kind of third house Gemini delineation. So these are like the purest of writers, the purest of mercurial stuff, and the ones that really have this interesting salesy approach, and very unique perspective on the world that they're meant to share and explore in that very naturally Gemini way. And I think there's a lot of gifts there that tend to come with the sun in Gemini in that third house that kind of adds to that. And obviously this is where you'd want to look at more aspects and stuff to see more of the depths of layers to kind of see what else is happening. But yeah, the sun in Gemini makes the sun in the third house can have this really doubling up on that and kind of become even stronger of a Gemini in a sort of way, or those third house and Gemini things can be so interwoven. And so there's a lot of identification further with those lessons. And kind of whenever you're in Aries rising, you kind of have this really like strong kind of doubling up on those lessons where everything's kind of like really pushing you to really see things, not even just sun in the Gemini portion, but sun in the third house in addition to that. So it's like a doubling up on the Gemini-esque part of it, but then the third house of the branding. So there's this very unique sort of approach that Sun, Gemini, in the third house is meant to have, because they're meant to do things in the Gemini external way, but also in that same vein, kind of brand themselves and learn their messaging a lot more in a obviously Gemini fashion, and so very like all over the place, and might have a very wide range, and kind of might have very interesting imagery and interesting branding that they're bringing up because of how many things they're kind of want to try, essentially, with that curiosity. But anywho, Sun in Libra in the third, Sun Aquarius in the third, the other two air signs, these are going to have a lot more of a they're all going to have social approaches to them with the sun in an air sign in that third house. But these are the ones that you see that have really keen eyes to that conversation, that artistry, that kind of therapeutic, that people person, the extroverts, the salespeople, the marketing people. It's a huge thing for all the air signs in that third house. Sun and Libra in the third house, I've said this almost, I think for the most part, most Libra third house people, I think, have this natural inclination towards therapy and counseling, and kind of reaching that sort of like middle ground. These are the ones that are going to be kind of odd too, because that sun does not do well in Libra in that third, so there is going to be some kind of opinions from others that they might listen to a little bit too much, or be a little bit too reliant on other people, or they don't want to look at themselves, or they don't really have the best relationship with their identity, and they outsource that sometimes. But they can also be, once they move past that, they're meant to kind of shine really well in relationships and in that kind of give and take. And so they can, once again, be amazing conversationalists and amazing support within that kind of dynamic, and also obviously within art and within all those different things. And then Sun in Aquarius, you're definitely going to see this as the people that are a little bit, once again, and with the sun in Libra and in Aquarius, they both have a little bit of a difficulty in air, because the sun wants to shine, it wants to be its own kind of identity, and in Libra and Aquarius, it's kind of forced to think about the others, not necessarily itself. And so Sun in Aquarius has this very detached kind of opinion. These are definitely the nomadic people, the people that are very different, very unique, very out there, and kind of special in a lot of the ways that they approach information. And they are the social justice people. I know someone who has their sun in the third house in Aquarius in specific, and they have been very vocal about their specific sorts of opinions from a political standpoint and from a group standpoint, and they're very identified with the organizations that they really care about, that are really close to their heart, that they feel the society needs to care about, whether it's things that are relative to really ancient, like, organizations, whether it's, military or, different sorts of things, but they can also be really related to the health regime and things that are really progressing in society. And so the sun in that third house in Aquarius has this really progressive idea where they really care about everyone. These are the really great, honestly, I would say that really great motivational speakers, really great petitioners, really great lobbyists, people that are really good at speaking for the people. The HR department kind of person would be, even Libra sun in the third house could also do that too. So there's so many different ways that third house can definitely alleviate that kind of, or well, yeah, alleviate that mental pressure depending upon that sun sign and what you choose to focus in on. Obviously, I'm taking these really brief little snippets because I'm not trying to make this video so ridiculously long. Although it's already quite long anyway because it's a third house video, and also I just talk a lot anyway. But at the end of the day, the third house with the sun is really about just this identification with your brand and knowing how to give your messaging and how to identify with who you are and share that with the world in a way that is true to your light and true to your identity, and how you figure that process out and how you gather the information of who you are. And that's such a powerful experience, and it's such a beautiful experience to kind of go through and keep that mind active and keep that exploration active of your identity and what it can entail, and kind of really build that up through the information that you're kind of been identified with and resonate with. There's a lot of resonance and dissonance with information that you see with the sun in that third house. Of, does this really fit with who I want to be and how I want to present myself? Is this going in this direction of learning this thing or studying this thing or accepting this opinion of me from someone else? Does that really resonate within my soul, within my identity? Can I attach myself to that and feel okay? And is it beneficial to who I want to become? And that's just a natural unfoldment that happens with the sun in the third house. And it is such a beautiful experience to see. And I love to see the identity unfold for some third house people, because they have such a beautiful story to tell when it comes to their identity, and it's so powerful as they age and as their specific sun sign goes through its evolution that is relative to those specific aspects and things like that, and sign placement and stuff at those additional layers. And it's so important to really identify your opinion, your voice, your thing, especially depending upon the sun sign, either separate of your father and that authority in the world, however you see authority. There needs to be either separation or an identification with that, and kind of letting go of those things. There's a very different thing, and that's obviously dependent on the sun sign in that third house. But there's a lot of, with the sun there in the third, there's a lot of father or authoritative identity with your opinion that's kind of mixed together. So think about that as well, as how that opinion from the father or authority and whoever you consider to be something of a leader in your life, how that impacts you, and how that is something that either is a benefit or a hindrance to your own growth and your own identity development. So anywho, so that's the third house Gemini series, or at least the sun portion here. And yeah, I appreciate you guys. Really, this is such a fun series. I love doing this. This is such an enjoyable thing, and I'm so excited to go through and experience the rest of these with you. I think there's so much to be said on this, and I really appreciate all of you for being here and going through this. And for those of you that have the sun in the third house or the sun in Gemini, feel free to put down below what your experience has been. If you guys are interested in any sort of conversations with me, consultations, bookings, private readings, anything like that, courses, feel free to look down below on my website and reach out to me either on here, on my socials, or on that website there as well. I love you guys. You guys are phenomenal, amazing. Thank you so much for being here and sitting through this information, probably on 2x speed, because you guys are quick with the information. Thank you so much once again, and I love you so much. Have an amazing day, and I wish you all the best. And yeah, talk to you guys later. Bye.